Now let me get back to my next guest, who I've been waiting to talk to for quite some time. My man from NBA radio, my man who used to cover the Knicks for 16 years, the one and only Frank Isola. But I do have to give him the proper introduction. What better way to get into my New York Knicks than talking to the man that covered them for about 16 years? One could easily argue has suffered as much as I have suffered watching these New York Knicks for years. He's the host of his show on NBA radio every weekday morning with Brian Scalabrine. Obviously, he's an astute, elite NBA reporter spanning decades. Worked for the New York Daily News for 16 years covering the New York Knicks. The one and only Frank Isola. By the way, let me not leave out his contributions to shows like Pardon the Interruption and various ESPN shows all the time. What's going on, Frank? How are you, my man?
Stevie Franchise, what's up? How you doing?
It's good to see you, man. Now, I heard you getting on me a little bit this morning. We'll get into that a little bit later, But I got to admit to you, I'm getting excited. I try to temper my excitement, but that damn Jalen Brunson is doing his thing. He's an MVP candidate. Nobody can doubt that. The New York Knicks on a 9-game winning streak. Tom Thibodeau is looking exceptional. How are you feeling about these New York Knicks that you're seeing right now?
You know, it's funny. If you go back to that team where Carmelo finished second in the MVP voting, that was when LeBron was in Miami, and the Knicks had beaten them at least 2 or 3 times that year. And I thought, this team's got a chance, but that was an older team. This is different. This is a much younger team with a young point guard. And you pointed out today on First Take all the assets that they have. So this is something that could be sustained for a while. But I think a lot of it begins with the point guard and the head coach. They're lock and step together. And it still blows me away that this guy was a second-round pick. I mean, all he's done his entire life is win. And everybody, all these, athletic, this and that. We'll look at the intangible. He wins. He's a leader. He makes those around him better. And, Steve, you know this. He's not going to be the MVP, or at least right at this moment, I don't think so. Right. He's going to get MVP votes this year, yes, the way that he's playing and the way that that team is winning.
How surprised are you, though, Frank, that he's looking the way that he's looking? We all saw that Jalen Brunson could play. We saw him in the playoffs, particularly when Luka had gotten injured, and then he came back, but he was carrying the Dallas Mavericks when he was a member of that team, really, really doing big things in the postseason. We still didn't see this. A brother averaging over 28 a game since OG Anunoby arrived in New York City, that's leading the New York Knicks on a tear, got them as a top 4 seed within the Eastern Conference. We didn't see this. What about you?
Yeah, I think you and I both thought he'd be good, probably not this good. It says a lot about a guy that puts a lot into his craft, number one. He's very coachable. He doesn't make excuses. He goes out there and he plays hurt. And then if you look at how he played in the playoffs last year, first round wasn't great. Second round was really good against Miami. He gave them a lot of trouble. Go back and listen to Eric Spoelstra's comments after that second round series. Eric Spoelstra, all he did was rave about Jalen Brunson. But I think, he understands the NBA life because his dad played. Then he was around the Chicago Bulls as a little kid, showing up at their training facility. So he's always kind of had the NBA mindset. Steph Curry's had it. Obviously, Klay Thompson has had it. A lot of sons of NBA players have had it before. But I think his drive to want to be good, to want to be great, has a lot to do with it. So against Indiana the other night, late in the game, he gets slapped in the face. How the referees missed that call, I have no idea. What does he do? He doesn't go to the locker room to get checked out. He's obviously upset on the bench during the timeout. He comes right out and he scores and he gets fouled and he leads them to victory. That's the kind of guy he is. He brings that kind of toughness that you need. There's no drama around Jalen Brunson. There's never any nonsense. It's just about playing basketball and winning. He's a no-nonsense guy, which is one of the reasons he resonates with the fans, much like Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason. The last time the Knicks really had a legitimate chance to win a championship was with those guys, and they were no-nonsense players, and I think Jalen Brunson's got a lot of that in him.
Over the last few games, in the midst of this winning streak, the New York Knicks are winning games without the injured Julius Randle, who hurt his shoulder, separated his shoulder. Mitchell Robinson has been out for months or what have you. Those two guys come back. I still view the New York Knicks as being a player away from a championship. I believe they're good enough right now, assuming those guys come back healthy, to get to the conference finals. But winning an actual championship, I think that's a bit far-fetched. Is there a player out there that you believe the New York Knicks should get that'll take them over the hump?
Well, first of all, just from a backup, I would go get a backup point guard. But in terms of a big-time player, they definitely have interest in Mikal Bridges. Do I think the Brooklyn Nets are going to trade Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks? I don't. I know what you've said on First Take, and I think you're 100% right about LeBron James. All this stuff about could he be traded? Maybe. LeBron always gets very passive-aggressive at this time of year. He sent out the emoji with the hourglass the other day after the loss. Did not play last night. I have a funny feeling he probably will play Saturday night at Madison Square Garden. But he makes so much sense, and I thought this for years. What could LeBron do to add to his legacy? I always thought two places: winning in Chicago, because that's where Michael won, or winning in New York. Because let's face it, Steve, he's seen as a mercenary. That's always going to be part of, his resume, but that's fine. That's part of Kevin Durant's resume. They're a great, you look at the great Cristiano Ronaldo in soccer. He's played for some of the biggest clubs in the world. Not everybody has to stay with one team. So I think if LeBron kind of embraces that, can you imagine if on LeBron's resume it says one in Cleveland, brought a championship to that city, one in LA, but then one in New York, a place where they haven't won since 1973.
Without question.
I think there are two teams, the Knicks, and then also I think the Philadelphia 76ers would be in play, because I think if you won in those two markets, obviously I think in New York, no offense to the people in Philly because it's been a longer drought, I think it'd be a bigger thing. But those two teams in the East, for me, make a lot of sense.
I don't think he would go to Philadelphia. I think there's only one place that LeBron James would leave Tinseltown for, and that's Gotham City, New York City. That's just my personal opinion. I'm looking at the New York Knicks, and I'm saying you got 11 first-round picks over the next 7 years. You got Evan Fournier's contract that you could get rid of that's going to save you about $19 million. You got a guy like Grimes that you could get rid of as well, even though he could play. He's not a scrub. But most importantly, they've got that draft equity, those draft assets, which the Los Angeles Lakers are in desperate need of. If you're the Los Angeles Lakers, again, I'm talking to a guy that's been covering the NBA for over a quarter century. If you are the Los Angeles Lakers, do you consider making that kind of move, knowing the draft equity you could get in return for the services of a LeBron James who's 39 years of age in his 21st season in the NBA?
All right. Yeah, and you know this better than anybody. Used to be bi-coastal, but really now you're living full-time in L.A. Who are we kidding? We know that the Lakers are all about stars, but look at it this way from their standpoint. They accomplished their goal with LeBron James. They got another title out of him, and he is toward the tail end. And look at the standings. I get it right now. They're 500, but you know what happens if you finish in that 8, 9, and 10, 7, 8, 9, 10 group. It's difficult. You're playing games, and you're getting a higher seeded team. Eventually, you caught up to them against the Denver Nuggets. It makes sense for LeBron. I think it makes sense for the Lakers. Why not get all these draft picks? Because you know what's going to happen with the Lakers? They'll use some of those draft picks they get to make a trade for a disgruntled player. It's always LA. It's always going to be the Lakers. Players want to go and play there. I think if they look at it from that standpoint and come to an understanding with LeBron at this stage, at this point, the best thing for both of us would be a trade, and that's why I feel the New York Knicks go in there and swoop in. But if I'm Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, whoever else is in the front office there in L.A., I think it makes sense from their standpoint.
Now, let me jump on you for a second here before I move on from this. You were talking on your NBA show this morning with Brian Scalabrine. By the way, I mess with y'all. Y'all are my boys. Y'all do a fantastic job. Really, really proud of the job that you're doing. You know I love y'all. But you were sitting up there talking about how Stephen A. said this about Tom Thibodeau. Now, let me state for the record what I said about Tom Thibodeau coming into this season. First of all, I know he's a great coach. He's a brilliant defensive mind. You are a guy that go way, way, way back with Tom Thibodeau from his days as an assistant coach in New York under Jeff Van Gundy, for crying out loud. And if I remember correctly, Pat Riley, but I'm not sure about that. Here's my question to you. Tom Thibodeau, I don't know of any coach who prioritizes the regular season more than he. He gets guys to play very, very hard, go all out, but in the same breath, I think he has the potential to exhaust players. Chicago, when he was the head coach. Minnesota when he was the head coach and in complete control. Obviously, that was something that was a stain on his record in the eyes of a lot of people, which you know better than most. I'm looking at him in New York. That was my concern, which is why I said a guy like Eric Spoelstra, and specifically Ty Lue, are coaches that I thought were a touch better than him, even though I know he's a great coach. However, they go get OG Anunoby. The defensive rating went from 20th to number 1 in the league in field goal percentage defense, in three-point percentage defense. But what's the problem with them? They're seen as a team not using their bench. And if you're playing your starters that many minutes, even though Jalen Brunson's only averaging about 35, it's going to come back to cost you. How am I possibly wrong in saying that, Frank Isola?
All right, a couple of things. Number one, when I do the radio show, there are two people that will text me during the show, and I get a pit in my stomach. One is Stephen A. Smith. The other one is my wife. And it's usually because Brian starts talking about Jennifer Lopez or Ali Love or something like that. And I got my wife on my case. Stephen A.'s texting me in the morning. I'm like, oh, boy, this is the last thing I need. All right, a couple of things about Tom. Number one, everyone talks about defense. They're top 6 offense and defense. That's the first thing. Last night, all he does is use his bench. because it's a lot of the starters are out. Mitchell Robinson is out, Julius Randle is out, OG Anunoby is out as well. I would only say this about prioritizing the regular season. I think the teams that win all do that. The Celtics did it last year. They ended up having 2 Game 7s at home against Philadelphia, which worked out. Game 7 against Miami didn't. The Denver Nuggets, let's be fair, they prioritized the regular season last year.
Yep.
They finished in number 1 in the West for the first time in history, and they ended up they were the higher seed in every playoff series they played, and they swept right through the competition. The only team that didn't take it seriously, and I still think it's going to be an aberration, is Miami, because they nearly got bounced out of the play-in tournament when they were down in the fourth quarter against Chicago after losing the 7-8 game to Atlanta. So I think Tom does use his bench, but remember now, Steve, all we heard from the fans for a year, he's needs to. OG Anunoby's got to play. Cam Reddish has got to play. Emmanuel Quickly's got to play. Those guys are now gone. They're not exactly tearing it up for the teams that they're on, and the Knicks are actually doing better without those guys.
Okay.
So I think Tom does a good job knowing the players that fit with him. I think Jalen Brunson 1,000% does. I think Dante DiVincenzo does. Certainly OG Anunoby does, among a bunch of players, including Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein.
I think he's absolutely phenomenal as a coach. I still think that Eric Spoelstra and Ty Lue are a touch better, but we will see, and we will revisit that discussion.
Both had LeBron.
That's fair.
Get Tom LeBron. We'll see if he wins with him like they did.
That's fair, but Eric Spoelstra didn't have LeBron when he got them to the finals last year. Stop that nonsense, okay? Last couple of questions before I let you get on out of here, because I know that you got to go. Having said all of that, what do you see, or who do you see in the Eastern Conference Finals? If you had to pick today, who are your 2 teams battling in the conference finals for a trip to the NBA Finals?
I think it's going to be Boston, either against the Knicks or Milwaukee. I think the Knicks finishing second would be really big. Obviously, the news with Embiid, it really hurts Philadelphia.
Right.
But Milwaukee, which has struggled, they've actually done really well against the Knicks, and obviously Doc Rivers, now as the coach, that could change things come playoff time. I think it's going to be Boston against either the Knicks or Milwaukee. I give the Knicks a really good chance, because right now they're just playing at a different level. And to your point, I think if they can make one move, maybe it'll be a minor move, or can it be a home run move? I think that could change things in the East.
Who are your 2 teams out west that's going to be in the conference finals?
I got to go with you on this one with Ty Lue and the Clippers. I love the way that they're playing, and I still think it's going to be the Denver Nuggets. Minnesota's great. I love what they've done. Oklahoma City. But come playoff time, you got them winning 2 playoff series, 3 playoff series to get to a finals. I just don't see it yet. I still think the cream will rise to the top. And the one thing, this, Steve, about Kawhi Leonard, we talk MVP from the first game of the season all throughout. Nobody really mentions Kawhi Leonard's name. Kawhi's played a ton of games.
Yeah.
And Kawhi Leonard, when he's on the court, it happened twice. It happened with LeBron in the finals. It happened with Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant got hurt. But Steph Curry was in there. He ends up being the best player on the court.
Oh, come on, man. You all know what the issue is with Kawhi Leonard. We all expect him to get hurt. That's why we don't mention him much. We know the brother's a superstar. We just don't expect him to be healthy come postseason time. Before I let you go, very last question. Did you see what LeBron did? Did you see what LeBron did today? He throws out a tweet. And basically, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, where he's talking about all of these folks in the media and all of these folks with their podcasts talking shit about Joel Embiid and how he needed to be on the court. What do y'all have to say now? Where are y'all now? He's paraphrasing. In other words, how dare all of us ask a question about Joel Embiid not playing against Denver, even though he's using that as an example, when in fact that's not what we were talking about. What we were talking about were guys abusing the privilege of having lucrative contracts, guaranteed salaries for years in place, and choosing to take off at their own volition and discretion. That's what we were saying. We weren't talking about guys who were legitimately injured. So I think LeBron is full of it with that, but no surprise there. What were your thoughts about that?
Well, and let's remember something else. He got hurt in a game that he played. He got hurt when Jonathan Kuminga dove for a loose ball, and go look at the replay of that. You could see something happen to Joel Embiid's leg.
Right.
So I think LeBron is messing with the facts a little bit here. And guess what? Joel Embiid has missed a lot of time over his career. He came into the league, he missed the first 2 years.
First 2 years?
Here's what drives me nuts about the Joel Embiid crowd. And I voted for him for MVP.
Okay.
We all know that he's great. He just hasn't done it long enough because he's hurt a lot. And let's face it, whether it's LeBron, Dirk Nowitzki, Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and last year Nikola Jokic, about all these MVPs, we always say, you got to do it in the playoffs. He's never won 8 playoff games. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even holding the standard of you have to win a championship. Can you just get out of the second round? That's what we all want to see from Joel Embiid.
Frank Isola, appreciate the great job. Appreciate you taking the time out to join me on my show, my podcast, Stephen A. Smith Show. Really appreciate it. Look forward to listening to you and Scalabrini talk in the future. And you know I'll catch you down the line. Thank you so much, my man. You take it easy.
All right, Steve. Keep up the good work.
The one and only Frank Isola right here with the Stephen A. Smith Show. Back with more in a minute.